Bienvenidos a Vox Terra. Today, a Democratic senator, a YouTuber, and a bill. An underrated, underreported bill at that. The YouTuber, Robert Reich, former labor secretary under President Bill Clinton. A man I consider on what I call the true left, meaning he makes his career now standing up to the powerful vested business interests that have so much sway in our government and society. A champion of labor and the environment. He recently interviewed Democratic Senator from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse. Someone I've recently been hearing interviewed on various environmental shows as someone exposing and standing up to dark money and the interests in our government and politics, especially those in the fossil fuel petrochemical industries, and a champion of climate change action. Well, his underrated bill is called the Big Oil Windfall Profits Tax. And Reich starts his video off by showing us a New York Times headlines. ExxonMobil reports a $8.9 billion fourth quarter as oil prices have soared. So this is really important because Whitehouse is looking at alternatives to what all the media and most politicians are calling for: open up more oil and gas drilling. The call we always hear. Well, based on the senator's website, his plan would tax large oil companies but exempt smaller ones that he claims to make up for 70% of U.S. domestic production. And his tax would grab what he's calling the windfall profits, or based on these recent price spikes, and then use that money not to fund more government but to give the public a rebate or a dividend, similar to how shareholders get a dividend, estimated at roughly $240 a year per tax filer. Something similar, interestingly, that every Alaskan resident gets from the oil and gas industry. Take the microphone, Mr. Senator.
It's actually probably a bit of a misnomer to even call it a tax, because taxes usually take the revenues and fund the government. This doesn't fund the government. This is a clawback of excess profits that these companies are grabbing from Americans, and it goes back into Americans' pockets in the nature of a quarterly dividend.
Now, they define these profits as windfall because, again, they're claiming they're not related to rising production costs very much, but more related to what Whitehouse calls oil cartels and commodity traders bidding up the prices in relation to expected shortages.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a racket because the cost at the wellhead in Texas hasn't changed significantly. What's changed significantly is the global oil price, which is set first by an international cartel of countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, and then speculators who jumped in to move markets around when Putin attacked Ukraine.
Now, Robert Reich goes on to define them as profiteering because here he's saying the oil companies, the major ones, are using these massive new windfall profits to largely benefit shareholders, which, as Sheldon Whitehouse points out, then in turn benefits largely CEOs due to the way they get compensated. And the money is not being reinvested, importantly, in my opinion, in a transition towards renewable energy. Take the mic, Mr. Reich.
They're not giving it to their workers. They're not investing in new production. They're not moving from fossil fuels into renewable energy sources. What they're doing is basically taking all of this extra money that consumers are spending at the pump, and they are pumping it into the pockets of shareholders.
And here it looks to me, in my opinion, like the oil and gas industry could have been, if they had been choosing to transition all these years, been a natural fit for geothermal power, as that involves drilling, as well as geothermal heating and cooling. Well, maybe you're like most of us, and to some degree, you're almost conditioned to defend these wealthy, powerful business interests. And you're going to say, well, why should they be made to do this? Well, what I say to that now that got me past my own conditioning is, you know what? We don't really have a free market. We all know about tax abatements, tax grants, tax subsidies. And in the case of the oil and gas industry, federal leasing on federal land and more, much of it underreported. For that, you can look to a group called Oil Change International. And the really big overlooked one I like to point out is something called market externalities, meaning the true cost of that product is pushed onto the public. So that gallon of gas or that disposable plastic cup, it doesn't factor in all the volumes of toxic waste, carcinogens, and greenhouse gases involved in the extracting, mining, refining, drilling, processing, shipping, and then waste containment that results from that. That cost we all just pay for at large. But worse, as these guys point out, the money, the profits also go to fund a massive public relations machine, as well as campaign contributions and lobbying efforts, influencing our media, our very way of thinking, and our politics to reinforce an industry that the excessive use of its product is pumping our biosphere full of carcinogens and greenhouse gases. For exposing the PR, I suggest you check out DSmog. For exposing campaign contributions, I like Open Secrets. Now, while it's true not all Democrats are on board with Sheldon Whitehouse's proposal, but there are no Republicans on board. Senate co-sponsors notably include Jeff Merkley, Democrat Oregon, Elizabeth Warren, Democrat Massachusetts, Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, my favorite, Richard Blumenthal, Democrat Connecticut, Tammy Baldwin, Democrat Wisconsin, Sherrod Brown, Democrat Ohio, Jack Reed, Democrat Rhode Island, Ed Markey, Democrat Massachusetts, Cory Booker, Michael Bennet, Bob Casey. And lastly, Congressman Ro Khanna will introduce legislation in the U.S. House of Representatives. We'll see who will be on board with that one. Well, our biggest question really should be, what influence does the fossil fuel petrochemical industry have in the media that solutions other than more drilling get so little attention and have gotten so little attention over the decades? All the meanwhile, that ice is disappearing and isn't coming back. Well, hey, I hope you found this video super useful, interesting, and somewhat entertaining. And if you did, until next time, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel. You've clicked that notification bell, you're liking, you're commenting. And until next time, as always, peace be with you.